President Biden making a push for 14 years of education for all Americans instead of 12. Although we at guests had pointed out that really, if you count kindergarten, there's already 13, right? Mr. Biden would like to make the U.S. more competitive, he says.
Does anybody think in the 21st century, with the change that's taking place in technology and across the board, that 12 years of education is enough to be able to live a middle-class life? I don't think so. And so the fact of the matter is, I've decided we should have a minimum of 14 years of education. I want to guarantee an additional 4 years of public education for every person in America, starting with providing 2 years of universal, high-quality preschool for 3- and 4-year-olds.
Okay, let's bring our panel back in. Yes, I do think that we can be effective, actually, if we start educating people during those 12 years or 13 years in school, instead of extending it. Why not do a better job in teaching kids now? Why not stop passing them just because you don't want to create some sort of problem within their family, or actually make them be accountable for learning what you're teaching them? Then maybe we don't have to go to 14.
Or stop forcing the teachers to teach so many other things and being concerned about social justice issues.
Reading, writing, arithmetic.
Exactly.
Yeah. How about that? Engineering is going to help us be more effective and competitive. Let's go to Stacy and get her thoughts on this.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts here, so let me try to cull it down. Listen, I really think that this is his opportunity to try to do this Build Back Better, which is a European thing that he wants to see here in America, and that involves mandatory public education. So right now in America, the biggest movement is homeschooling. Black parents, Hispanic parents, rich parents, people who have never before even evaluated the education that their child's receiving during the pandemic. They learned things they didn't want to know, and now there's the CRT issue. So they're homeschooling, and they want to pull their kids out of public schools. They're losing millions of students this way. So what they want to do to bolster their unions and to make sure that they can teach CRT to kids as early as possible is make preschool mandatory by first making it something that is universal. So then kindergarten would no longer be optional. You would have to have your child in school from the age of 3. That would give them unfettered access to your kid to teach them all about how if they're white, they're a racist, and if they're black, they're a victim. So I don't buy this. Listen, there are plenty of kids in America today who, we realized this when our daughter was a junior and she switched out of traditional private school into homeschooling her senior year, that she only needed 2 classes to graduate according to the Missouri state standard. So most kids can actually complete their entire high school education by 10th grade if they're taking the classes in an order that's best for them, which means that extra 4 hours of time that kids spend at school that's not instructional time, the fact that they only have 188 contact days a year here in the state of Missouri, and that's similar for across the country. These are things that need to be addressed, and President Biden should stay out of it. School is a local issue. It's best handled as close to the kids as possible, which means local school boards and parents working together to teach kids actual education and not CRT. I could say more, but there it is.
That's the thing about it, is it feels more political than a concern about education.
It is. It's actually a part of President Biden's larger $4 trillion infrastructure plan, which includes not only traditional infrastructure, but social programs like this, because this would include funding for 2 years or an additional year, 2 years of pre-K, and then that to be followed by 2 years of community college.
Want to get your reaction, panel, to this parent's experience with how they are pushing critical race theory, how that affected his child. Listen to this.
The problem with bringing it to high school and grade school level is that we don't have the educators to properly teach these kids. Instead, they're using it as their own agenda to indoctrinate the kids to hate each other. And whether you believe that to be true or not, the reality is that's what's happening. Critical race theory is teaching that white people are bad. That's not true. That would teach my daughter that her mother is evil. You already have an educator within your staff that has pulled my daughter aside and said, well, you're a minority, so you know better than to engage in certain things.
Wow.
Whoa. When I was brought to the school's attention, nothing happened to the educator. Instead, my daughter was brought in, and she was ridiculed.
AJ, your thoughts?
My heart breaks.
The way that things are being done in schools today, instead of us focusing on educating students on what will make them successful, we're focusing on the past and on teaching them harmful things that can harm their self-esteem, can harm their view of their future. At the end of the day, you have countries like Japan who are introducing artificial intelligence and creating programs where every student can get an individualized education. You walk into school in Japan and they see where you are and they create an individual plan for you. And then teachers work with the students to help them.
Yeah.
So we're here arguing about teaching systemic racism to kids, teaching kids about colonization. And Japan is teaching their children to take over the technology world, math, and science.
Yeah,
And this is the issue that we have in this country right now.
they're trying to dumb down everything, make sure everybody's the same, instead of capitalizing on different people's abilities and talents so that they can learn more. If you can learn this, how about learning this and keep pushing? Trey, wrap it up here.
You just hit the nail on the head. This is a form of cultural Marxism, and there's no question about it. And you know what? To go full circle to where this started with Joe Biden saying he wants to extend school to 14 years, what Democrats did is got together and said, why indoctrinate kids for only 12 years when we can do 14?
Okay. All right.
Good point.
We'll leave it there for now. Coming up, why the second largest defense contractor in the country is telling their employees to identify their privilege and decolonize their bookshelves. We're going to talk about that when we come back.